Hello, everybody, and welcome to another My Music. I hope you're well, whatever it is you're doing today. I hope you've had your breakfast if it's early in the morning, or I hope you've had your lunch if it's lunchtime. In a minute, I'm going to be speaking to David. He's going to tell me all about his music. But first, from the people that actually David knows very well at Analog Trash, here's a little vid. Recognise a few people there, David?
I certainly did, but that's the first time I've ever seen that video, and I was quite impressed.
Oh, there you
Very
go.
Good.
There you go. Yeah, something Adrian knocked up in his lunchtime.
I bet. Right. I bet.
Yeah, there we go. So, David, welcome. What's your surname, David?
It's Little, as in small.
As in small. There you
as
go.
In small. There we go.
We're not gonna get into sizism or anything like that today. You are from Lines of Silence.
Indeed, yes.
What a great name.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you where that comes from, but firstly, how many lines of silence are there in your music?
How many lines are we? So we're currently 2. It started off as a solo project, just me. Kind of became a bit more of a collective with random people coming and playing gigs, but we kind of got a core. I guess we're a core duo now. It's myself and Dave Clarkson, who's probably be known to some people. He's worked with a lot of different musicians across the ages, I suppose. Based in Manchester, works with a band called Scissorgun, does a lot of solo stuff. But yeah, he's the other line at the moment, which is great. It's great to have him involved.
There you go. So yeah, where did the name come from?
So there's an artist I really like called Richard Long, who does a lot of basically all his stuff is I guess we'd call it art in nature or something like that. So he creates kind of sculptures out of rocks and various other bits and pieces, goes on these epic long walks. And I've always really been a fan of his art, but he also, one of the things he does is kind of write these very, not quite haikus, but kind of very short sentences of stuff that are going through his mind when he's out on his rambles. And I had 2 up as postcards on the wall, and there were just a couple of phrases that struck me. One of them I can't even remember what the one was that I really liked. I thought, well, that would be a good band name. Looked it up. Inevitably, someone had it. So I combined two phrases of these from these kind of these little kind of prose poems, I guess, really. And yeah, and then we became Lines of Silence.
There you go. There you go. Oh, you have a dog.
Oh, you can hear her, can you?
Yeah.
She's in the kitchen, but she's quite loud, so she's making her presence known.
Well, yeah, no silence there. No silence.
Not much silence from her side of things.
I love it. It's probably the postman, given the time of day or whatever. You know, that's normally what sets them off. Mine's fast asleep at the moment, fortunately. if the postman comes, then mine will join in.
Yeah.
Is there? You say you like nature, etc. I mean, obviously,
yeah.
In some respects, electronic music is as far from nature as it possibly could be. But then again, on the other hand, I suppose it creates soundscapes and sort of almost landscapes, doesn't it?
Yes.
Do you see a connection between what you do and nature?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, I kind of that kind of interest for me kind of created a vague concept, I think, around the original Lines of Silence stuff I was doing. I guess it was, so I did a project that was kind of based around the solstices and equinoxes. So I released a track, like an EP, I guess it was, and then that became an album. And it was a loose concept, really, to hang some music off of. I didn't really see that coming through. I mean, I did use some field recordings. I used to be a bit more into field recordings, but there's a very practical reason why I stopped doing them, really, because I had my sound recorder nicked. But many years ago, I mean, I could obviously use my phone and stuff like that, but I think as a result of that, I just stopped using field recordings quite as much.
Yeah.
I suppose the music is quite. Sorry.
I said, what were you using back in the day? A little mini disc?
No. It was. I think it was a Sony. Little Sony kind of handheld digital recorder. It was lovely, really nice. But yes, it had a house break in it, and that was one of the many things that went, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of, I mean, you mentioned Equinox and whatever. Where does obviously, famously, people like Jar talked about that. Where does your history of electronic music go back to?
Well, in terms of making it or listening or both?
To it, yeah.
Listening to it, yeah. I mean, so I was, I'm quite eclectic in my music taste. So, I mean, going back to, I probably was quite into kind of electro pop and stuff like that when I was a teenager back in the 80s. But then, I kind of progressed on to other things and went through a bit of a prog rock phase, as we all do when we're earnest 16-year-olds. And then it opened up into a lot of different things after that. I mean, I've always been quite a big krautrock fan, I suppose. So Tangerine Dream is probably the first band I really got into in that sense. Kraftwerk and a lot of other things. So, but yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in lots of different things. I was a drummer originally, and actually kind of the only instrument I learned to play properly, in inverted commas. So I've never been like an accomplished instrumentalist as such, apart from on the drums, which I was okay. So I suppose I've always been drawn to that kind of texture side of music, electronic music, as opposed to kind of technical skill on a particular instrument.
Do you normally start with drums then? Is drums where you tend to start on a track?
Not necessarily. I mean, the earliest stuff I was doing was actually beatless, which is kind of interesting, I guess, given my background. But I've kind of introduced more beats now. I mean, sometimes we might start with the beats, but or a sort of a synth line, or a sequence or something like that. So I don't think there's any hard and fast rule. But it's actually quite nice bringing back that side. I mean, Dave, who I mentioned, was also a drummer, so I kind of think we've got that kind of rhythmic sense about us. So even if we don't use beats, we still try and keep things quite rhythmic.
Yeah, nice. Who are you listening to today?
Right now, oh gosh, a whole load of stuff. So I'm looking at my record collection over here and my CD collection, trying to remember what I've been listening to. I mean, in terms of electronic music, I've really enjoyed the Craven Thoughts albums recently. Modular synth kind of stuff. Some of the stuff that's been coming out on the Din label, and Field Lines Cartographer, people like that on Castles in Space. But yeah, a whole mixture of stuff really. Tree Speaker, a bit I'm a big fan of. I've recently got into them, so they kind of do a bit of a krautrock thing, but they kind of combine it with, I suppose, almost like John Barry kind of spy theme type aesthetic. So I'm really drawn to that. And I actually picked up a secondhand copy of Smile by Brian Wilson. So obviously his take on the classic kind of unreleased Beach Boys classic. And I've always quite liked the Beach Boys, but never been a massive fan. But I was listening to that and it blew me away, really. So yeah, just a lot of different things. I mean, I might listen to more ambient stuff if I'm, if I'm reading or trying to work or something like that, not on music. But yeah, kind of a bit of a range of things at the moment, and a lot of jazz as well recently. So cool. Dave and myself are really big. Well, he's got a great knowledge of jazz, much more than I have. But very much getting into the electric Miles Davis period. Anything from In a Silent Way onwards, On the Corner, Get Up With It, all that kind of stuff, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, a lot of beats in that stuff.
Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Have you ever considered lifting and sampling? Have you ever thought about adding in elements of pre-existing music into what you're doing?
Not sampling so much. I mean, when I first started Lines of Science, I wanted it to be very much organic, and I suppose that's the sort of the connection with nature, if you like. And I wanted it to be just sounds I made, so I didn't want to get loops involved or samples or that kind of stuff. We do use some loops sometimes now, but you know, I try and keep that minimal. I guess really in terms of the influence of some of those things, I mean, particularly the Miles Davis stuff we were talking about was, I mean, we've tried to incorporate the feel of some of those tracks into what we've been doing. So, for instance, on the new album, we've got a track which was very much kind of influenced by "He Loved Him Madly" by Miles Davis, and not because we're not great instrumentalists, as I said, but but there's something about the mood and the feel of that piece we wanted to kind of capture. So we did that in our own kind of idiosyncratic way, really. Tried to get a few kind of, I suppose, stylings on it. You know, I was sticking everything through wah pedals and putting lots of electric piano on. But, you know, I wouldn't say we could approximate anything like jazz because we're just not advanced enough as instrumentalists. But yeah, I'd say that's kind of where the influences come through, really. It's trying to take a mood of something or some of the textures as opposed to actually lifting stuff out as samples.
Yeah. Do you know what I always love about interviewing musicians that are in this sort of electronic genre is that, you know, whereas like most other musicians have guitars hung on their walls, you guys always have like cables.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, a lot of those cables are actually from my guitar. I mean, I do play guitar. I mean, when we play live, I mainly play guitar. So yeah, so there are a lot of a lot of bits and pieces, MIDI leads and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. Are you quite
the guitars are on the floor?
Are you quite geeky? Are you quite into tech full stop?
That's a good question. Ish, yes. I mean, I'm a bit geeky about that kind of stuff, but I'm not kind of like obsessed with vintage synths or anything like that. I mean, I've got a couple of analog synths, and I actually did start building a modular rig at some point, but I haven't got the patience for it, and I didn't really feel like it was adding anything, to be honest. So I just went, you know what, I'm just going to get rid of this. I did that, and I'm more like using like desktop synths. So just bought a Moog Mother 32 recently, secondhand, which I love, absolutely love. Yeah, and then I've got some other bits and pieces, and yeah, but you know, I'll use whatever's around, really. So I don't mind using kind of digital synths, soft synths, if that's the kind of, you know, the vibe we want to get. You know, I've got things like Farfisa organs and mellotrons on the laptop, and I'm never going to be able to afford one of those, so I'm quite happy to use those.
Are you always on the hunt for a sound, though? Are you always on the hunt for a new sound?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, we're very kind of, like I said, we're very sort of texture and sound based. So I think, yeah, sort of experimenting with stuff. So, I mean, I quite like having a limited palette in a way, because I think that helps me be more creative. I think if I've got everything in front of me, and I kind of do really, because I use Ableton, and there's so much in there. It's almost like it's too much. You get choice paralysis. So yeah, so I'd probably start with, when I work with stuff, I might start with like synths and things like that. You know, can add effects just to get some interesting sounds and textures. Dave will then, you know, he might process those sounds or bring in his other sounds as well that kind of create more of a palette when they're combined.
I watched a little Instagram reel during the week of it's the guy that came up with the keyboard sound for Michael Jackson for Billie Jean.
Oh yeah,
you may have seen it doing the rounds at the moment, and it was on an old Casio. It was, you know, compared with what you get these days, nothing particularly special. And he was talking about the fact that he was just bored, right? Because he was on tour with Michael Jackson, and there was just a lot of downtime where there was nothing else to do, and he combined a horn sound with a string sound, and that's why how you get that sound. Do you find boredom quite a motivator?
Yeah. Do I find boredom a motivator? I don't know. I'm kind of quite busy, really, so I don't get a huge amount of time to be bored. No, I don't know if I do. It's an interesting one, isn't it? To be honest,
Yeah.
I mean, I know what you're getting at. It's that kind of like, oh, shall I just kind of play around with something and see what comes out? I mean, I guess so much of my process is that anyway. It's hard to know if that's actually boredom feeding into that or just kind of it's my natural way of working.
Yeah, I guess there's an element by which it's like if you don't have the time, then you potentially just gravitate towards what's there. Whereas if you have time, and you're constructive in filling that time because you don't want to be bored, then you maybe push a little bit further. It's an interesting dichotomy in a way, isn't it? Really?
It is. Yeah. And I think because of, I mean, I'm not working right now, but I'm you know, Dave and myself usually have day jobs, so that kind of restricts the amount of time that we have for doing music. So we kind of try and pour everything we can into that time. So yeah, we don't have a lot of kind of, unfortunately, a lot of the kind of dead time for us to play around with stuff. So yeah, we tend to be quite focused.
Yeah. Now, listen, if Adrian from the record company, if he came over for coffee one evening or whatever, would he find anything surprising in your record collection?
Oh God, I suspect so. I mean, you know, AD's great. We live quite near to each other, and I got to know him previous to us kind of signing with Analog Trash, and he's an eclectic guy. You know, AD. He's got a lot of interesting stuff in there, but I'm sure
I don't think he'd rib you for it. But is there anything you think surprising? Is there anything that surprises you?
Yourself? About my record collection, about like, musically, yeah. I mean, I suppose it doesn't surprise me because it's me. You know, it's stuff I've grown up with. But you know, I've kind of, I mean, there's stuff I probably got I liked when I was younger that I won't listen to so much now. But I quite like not. Back in the day, I used to sort of buy and sell music CDs all the time because I didn't have the money. But now I kind of try and keep hold of stuff, you know. So I might look at it and go, "God, that's terrible." But I kind of, it's part of me, you know, because it's stuff I listen to at some point in my life. So I've got a right mixture of stuff. So you know, I've got anything from, you know, Wings albums. I was a big Wings fan back in the day, discovered them for the Beatles. So, you know, I'm proud of my Wings albums. So I like a little bit of soft rock. I've got a lot of prog rock hanging around. I've even got some old G2 albums and things like that. Some of these things are things I wouldn't necessarily listen to now. Although a big Wings fan still love them. But yes. So there's a mixture of stuff in there.
Wouldn't find any like 5-star in there or
no. You see, all that stuff I had was like on cassette really back in the day, you know, and then I think it's terrible. I think I just threw all my cassettes out, which is you know, obviously not great in terms of the environment, but you know, I kind of wish I'd held on to some of those. But yeah, I used to have like Howard Jones and things like that on cassette, Thompson Twins.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I got hold of a Thompson Twins vinyl the other day. I'll play it after this. I think just because you reminded me. How
they're great. That? I mean, I listen to some of that stuff on Spotify sometimes. I think, do you know what? These are great songs. You know, these are good.
Great songs and some really great sounds in them as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, some of it feels, you know, of its time, but even so, it's still, sort of objectively, like, you know, great songs, great kind of sounds. Yeah, you're right.
What haven't you done yet that you would like to do?
Oh gosh, what haven't I done? Sort of what in terms of like making music or or performing or something. I don't know really. I think it's so.
Or don't you know until you get there?
I think that's a lot of it really. I mean, when I work on my own, sometimes I have a kind of an idea of what I want to achieve, you know, or I might be influenced by a track I've heard or a certain sound, and then I try and create something like that. It turns into something completely different. And then I think because as a duo, so this is the first album that Dave and myself have worked on together. I think we're kind of, I mean, we work really well together, but I think that's really interesting because we're both learning about how each other works, and I'm taking a lot from him. He's taking stuff from me. So, you know, I feel like we're just developing all the time, really. So I don't really know what's going to come out. I think what I've taken a lot from Dave is getting more into the beats and things like that, because that's very much kind of where he's come from. So I I think what I'd like to do, I mean, you know, like started off sort of making the kind of more soundscape based stuff, like, you know, quite long tracks. And for the new album, we've got, I guess, I always think of things in terms of sides, like, you know, it's not coming out on vinyl, but I think of it as side one is like the short track, side two is a long ambient piece, which is the sort of the jazz influence one I mentioned. But I think next I'd really like to really concentrate on more structured, shorter pieces, but maybe do something a sort of companion piece, which might be more ambient, because I like doing both of those things. They're both, you know, they're both really interesting to me. So yeah, I think I just like to keep pushing forward, really, not repeating stuff, but just kind of developing, really, and see where we end up. I mean, I think, you know, I've got certain influences and a certain sound in mind that I kind of, you know, I'm not going to start making like techno records or anything like that. Not there's anything wrong with that, but you know, it's good to sort of start from a base of influences and then sort of expand out, I guess, for me.
Yeah. Could you see your stuff in film?
Yeah, I'd love to do some soundtrack work. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, we are well, entirely instrumental at the moment. I think some of the moods that we create and stuff like that would work really well in film. So it's always been something I've been interested in, and we work with visual artists when we play live, and I think that combination of sound and visuals is really powerful, and they both make the other one much bigger than they are on their own. So yeah, I'd definitely be very interested in that kind of thing.
Well, if you're a filmmaker and you're listening, watching, do get in touch.
Yeah, indeed.
It's been a pleasure meeting you today, David.
Likewise.
Look at that.
Thanks,
Time has flown. One last question before you go,
yeah.
Which is so again, the project's called Lines of Silence.
Mm-hmm.
How much silence can you leave in a song before it's dangerous?
Yeah, like well, do you know what, even though we called Lines of Silence, we tend to try and keep things minimal, but we probably don't have as much silence in there as the name might suggest. And I think if you're doing something ambient, you bring it on, you know, nice big pauses between the notes. But don't know, maybe it's an experiment. Maybe we should try, you know.
Yeah, because there must be a point at which someone thinks this is finished, or this is that's gone now.
Yes,
but
yes, it's expectation, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah. But where that is, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it depends very much on the type of music. I think if people have certain expectations they bring to the music, and if you play with those expectations, it's fine. But I think if you push it, like you say, it's frustrating, isn't it? Because you're not getting that resolution, you're not getting that next thing. So yeah, a lot of these things I think are based on feel, and obviously, you know, we all listen to a lot of music as well as making it. So I guess that's kind of like hardwired in us somewhere. But could be an interesting experiment, couldn't it, to push it?
Oh, I'd love to see someone do that as an album. I think it'd be fascinating to just push areas of silence through the music and just see how much it kind of messes with people.
Yeah, but it's a great. I don't know what made me think of this actually, but there's a great Robert Wyatt album. I think it's one of his last ones, and it's I mean, it's just, I got it on CD, but I guess it's the same thing of like having a concept of sides. And I think there's one track which finishes and just has silence at the end, and it's just to let that kind of what you just heard settle before you then move on to the next thing. So that's quite an interesting use of silence, I think.
Yeah, rather than that's not the actual end of the track. There's deliberate.
Yes, the track is finished, but if you look at it on the terms of a CD, that silence is part of that track or the track on the records, which is a nice idea, I think.
I think that's a very nice idea. Well, you do carry on with your Lines of Silence as long as you may be allowed to, sir. And thank you so much for coming and talking to us today.
Thanks very much for having me. And sorry Dave can't be here, but duty calls unfortunately for him. But thanks for having us, even if Dave is not present. He's present in spirit.
Thank you. This
all right,
David
cheers, Graham.
From Lines of Silence. If you've enjoyed this, please do share with your friends and family. If you haven't, then I'm sorry we've wasted 25 minutes of your time, but you know, you can probably get that back if you run faster. Until next time, bye for now.